The nation's longest-running traveling celebration of traditional arts, the National Folk Festival comes to downtown Jackson for the first time, November 7th through the 9th. A fun-filled weekend for the entire family, exploring roots, richness, and variety of American culture. Non-stop music and dance, folk life demonstrations, hands-on children's activities, signature Southern foods, crafts, and more showcasing the best of America, the best of Mississippi, all free. We'll see you in November. More at nationalfolkfestival.com.
Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, is the official companion podcast to the upcoming MPB original documentary, focusing on the life of Medgar Evers. The companion podcast, hosted by me, Rita Brent, will feature in-depth conversations, extended interviews, and exclusive archive footage not shown in the documentary. Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, video and audio episodes premiere September 18th. Find it on mpbonline.org or wherever you get your podcasts. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Mississippi Think Radio. This is the Sit Down with Russ Latino, where we explore the ideas and people that are shaping Mississippi's future. It is good to be back in the booth, as they say, on this Wednesday. Enjoyed the conversation last week with Chef Derek Emerson. Always enjoy being present with my good friend, the ever-bubbly, effervescent Saint Germaine flooding the booth.
Good morning, Russ.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I love seeing you smile. It just makes me happy.
I try my best to stick with that thing.
And we're Facebook friends now, so I get to see you like
Go
real you.
wild.
I'm like, she's awesome. No, you're fun. You're fun.
Thanks.
It is getting hot outside.
Yeah, it was and been.
Yeah, it's been, but I think it's getting even hotter.
Yeah.
My poor son, we told him he had to get out and do something this summer. And so the something was tennis.
Okay.
Which is not a bad sport to get into.
Okay. Our own Kevin Farrell is an avid tennis player.
Is that right?
Yes, he is.
So I will tell you this. He goes 3 days a week from 10:30 to noon. Mm-hmm. He is not a fan of Dad right now. He comes home beat red.
He's mad.
Not as happy as I'd like him to be about what he's just done. It's hot outside. But you know what you should do when it's hot outside?
Take a dip in a pool?
A dip in a pool. Or if you got a little leisure time, there's this thing called air conditioning.
That is?
You can stay inside.
Yes.
And you can read a good book.
That's it.
And so today we have the author of 7 good books in studio with us. A Mississippian, native Mississippian. I think you lived in Louisiana for a little while. Is that right?
When I was around 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, you're Mississippian and a physician, Darden North. Welcome to the Sit Down, sir.
Thank you, Russ. That was a great segue into reading books in the hot summertime. That's a great idea.
I try. I really do. It's not that there's a ton of forethought. It either works or it doesn't. Sometimes it works. So look, you've got a brand new book out. Called Rooftop.
Right.
Your first 4 books, as I understand it, were kind of standalone books, right? You didn't need to read all of them to understand the book.
That's true. True.
The last 3 are a trilogy.
Right. I really consider all the books standalones, although Rooftop is the third in a trilogy of novels that feature my protagonist, Diana Bratton, who's a female surgeon here in Jackson. So she was introduced in Wiggle Room, then The 5 Manners of Death, when she became actually the protagonist in that book, the main character, and then, of course, now Rooftop. So, again, it is a trilogy. I hope everybody will read all of my books, but each book is standalone, so you don't have to read them all.
Okay. So actually, I got a question for you.
Sure.
So I'm a big fan of a comedian named Norm Macdonald. He passed away a few years ago. I don't know if you're familiar with Norm Macdonald or not, but I have heard him in an interview say that in his first few years, he wasn't particularly good on stage. And then Sam Kinison, who was an older comedian, kind of rough around the edges, basically told Norm Macdonald, tell jokes about things you know.
Okay.
Writers, I think, sometimes are told, write about what you know. You're a physician,
Sure.
right? You've been a physician for 40 years, close to it?
Practiced at Jackson Healthcare for Women pretty close to 40 years, yeah.
Okay. So your books have, I wouldn't call them medical themes, but certainly your knowledge of the medical field bleeds over into your writing.
true. Most of the characters are medical characters, although the books are not necessarily about the medicine. So we're not talking about, terrible diseases or gene problems or whatever like that. So, and you don't have to know anything about medicine to enjoy the books. But you're right, it is easier to write about something you know. Of course, I'm not a general surgeon or trauma surgeon like Diana Bratton is. I'm a gynecologist, but still I have the flavor of medicine. I know how medical characters would interact with themselves and that kind of thing.
So you've got some characters that reappear throughout,
right.
Not only throughout the last 3 books that are sort of a trilogy, but through the first 4 books, there are also characters that reappear. In your medical profession, do you sometimes have friends of yours pick up the phone and say, hey, I think you're writing about me?
I think everybody wishes they were a certain character in a book or would like to think that someone has written about them. There's really no one particular I can think of that I've really just modeled any character after. So they really are fictional. But and I do think my family is almost afraid now to read my books because they're afraid they're in them. But that is what's so fascinating about writing that's different from anything else, because it is art, is that you can imagine somebody different. Maybe you are thinking about a particular person, but you can change that person into a much nicer person or a much more evil person, and or actually put yourself in that person's body. And I think that's what's so fascinating about writing, is the imagination part of it.
So there's no Diana Bratton roaming around in the real world with a different name?
No, I mean, I'm sure there's a beautiful, attractive, mid to late 30s female surgeon out there who's solving murder mysteries. I'm sure there is. But anyway, I don't know her yet. I know Diana Bratton, though.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about Rooftop specifically. I don't want to give it all away because obviously we'd like for people to go buy the book, and they can go to dardennorth.com and access how they can buy the book. They go to Amazon, access how they buy the book. Local bookstores, I think Lemuria carries this book.
Sure.
Lots of bookstores across Mississippi, plenty of places they can buy it. What are readers going to get when they pick up Rooftop?
I think what they'll see is someone, particularly if they follow the Diana Bratton character, they'll see someone that has matured. Sort of her character arc was being introduced as the single mother of an abusive ex-husband who had a bunch of debt acquired in medical school and residency, who was trying to get a job and make something of herself. And then as she goes from Wiggle Room into The 5 Manners of Death, the second novel, she, like I said before, she becomes a major character and grows and becomes stronger. And she's actually sort of a shoulder to cry on for the male surgeon who she eventually marries. And, spoiler alert, but they do get married. And then so by the time we get to Rooftop, she has is the real surgeon in Jackson. She's who everybody wants to go to, but her daughter is also now a teenager who's driving. She's a cheerleader. Dinah feels pressure not only to be a high-producing surgeon, but she also has to be a cheerleader mom now too. Then our detective in town, who is sort of like a Columbo type, Key Martin, reappears in all 3 books. He is sort of had an infatuation with Dinah from the minute he met her. Sort of like a Columbo type, like I may have said, but he draws her into a lot of solving murder cases. And in Rooftop, the main case is that the husband of one of her female surgeon partners is shot, and no surprise, he's shot from a rooftop. Yeah. And so Dinah is faced with whether she should suspect her partner Von Sell having shot her husband, or does someone else do it? And of course, Dinah, it's also complicated by the fact somebody pulls a gun on Dinah twice during the book.
Yeah, and if you go to your website, I think the teaser is something along the lines of, could a brother murder a sister? So is that the twist?
Well, the twist starts, there's lots of twists in this book, and I think that's why you want the reader to keep turning the page and go to the next chapter. That's the goal. But early in the novel, a new patient comes in to see Diana, and the first thing he says is, what kind of monster would murder his own sister? And so she suddenly wants to know, how can I get out of this room? I need to get away from this guy. But he is a minor character in the book that does tie it all together.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think part of what fascinates me about you and candidly about people like you, I mean, you've got a full-fledged, I don't want to say real career because I think both of your careers at this point are real careers.
Right.
But, my understanding of your writing is that it was sort of a side thing in the sense that you would do it on weekends, evenings, vacations, whenever you could squeeze it in. And the rest of your time was literally devoted to the practice of medicine, right?
Sure. My wife, Sally, doesn't want me to write books on vacations anymore, but we just discussed that earlier today. But it did start off as sort of a hobby, but I really consider it as a second profession. I still work full-time, operate, see patients, have long days at the office, but I do find time to write on weekends or at night. And if I do have some time off, I've found that once I get about halfway through the manuscript of the novel, the last 50% is very easy. It goes a lot faster. But again, it takes me a couple of years to get a book done.
So that's the key. I have tried to write 4 books. Maybe you can tell me how to do this at some point.
Sure.
I get a couple chapters in and I'm like, no, this is not going to work. And so I've got 4 couple chapter books written, 3 that are nonfiction and boring as sin.
Sure
I want to talk
not.
to you a little bit about your process,
Sure.
though.
Sure.
We got to take a brief break. We'll
All
come
right.
back, maybe talk a little bit about the process, how you got into it to start, because I'm fascinated by that, given your medical background. We're talking to Darden North. Please go check out Rooftop. Support a local Mississippi author. Certainly go support a local Mississippi bookstore. Bookstores are just fun places to go. You're listening to Sit Down. We will be back in just a moment.
The nation's longest-running traveling celebration of traditional arts, the National Folk Festival comes to downtown Jackson for the first time, November 7th through the 9th. A fun-filled weekend for the entire family, exploring roots, richness, and variety of American culture. Non-stop music and dance, folk life demonstrations, hands-on children's activities, signature Southern foods, crafts, and more showcasing the best of America, the best of Mississippi, all free. We'll see you in November. More at nationalfolkfestival.com.
At the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience in Meridian, we believe in the power of the arts, storytelling, and education, just like Mississippi Public Broadcasting. MPB connects communities across the state with quality programs that inform, inspire, and engage. Their audience is loyal and appreciative of businesses that support public broadcasting, which makes underwriting on MPB a smart investment. Join us in supporting MPB. Learn more at mpbfoundation.org.
Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, is the official companion podcast to the upcoming MPB original documentary, focusing on the life of Medgar Evers. The companion podcast, hosted by me, Rita Brent, will feature in-depth conversations, extended interviews, and exclusive archive footage not shown in the documentary. Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, video and audio episodes premiere September 18th. Find it on mpbonline.org or wherever you get your podcasts. MPB, your stories, our mission.
But I want to give you due respect. We're talking about his 7th book, Rooftop. I'll hold it up. You can go out and get a copy of Rooftop at your local bookstore, certainly in Mississippi. I know you get around. You do a lot of book signings too, right?
Yes, I actually enjoy that. I enjoy meeting with the public and meeting readers and speaking at book clubs and things like that.
Do you have any coming up?
I will actually be at Barnes & Noble this Saturday, the new Barnes & Noble out in Dogwood. I think it's Market Street, Mackenzie Lane, from noon till 3 this Saturday, July 26th.
Okay, so
Come
you
on out.
You can go out and get a copy of Rooftop,
Sure.
meet Darden, get Darden to sign your book. He was kind enough to sign this for me. He signed one for Germaine as well.
He signed two.
He signed two for Germaine.
Two for me, one in 2022 and one now in 25. But I forgot he signed the 22.
Germaine is more likable than me, so she got a nicer signature.
Listen, and look, I was on the website, and I love the slug, Darden. Finally, a doctor whose writing you can read. That's the slug.
That is
Right,
good,
'cause
yeah.
It's typed and printed, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you come up with that, or did a literary agent come up
No,
with
actually,
that?
the Denton Gibbs agency here, marketing agency, came up with that. And it's been a
pretty
great
good.
one. I get a lot of use out of that.
So before the break, we were talking about, just how you got into this. And maybe I want to take a step back. You were born in Jackson, moved to Louisiana. Where were you in Louisiana?
We lived in Sulphur, Louisiana. My father worked for the Boy Scouts of America and was transferred down there. And actually, I lived there for about 6 years. I think it was four to age 10.
Okay.
Yeah. And then moved to Cleveland, Mississippi after that.
And how did y'all end up in Cleveland?
He was transferred to Cleveland.
Okay, so with his job.
Right. And my mother actually was a school teacher, and she taught in Indianola and Shaw, Mississippi, and my father basically worked in Clarksdale, but we lived in Cleveland. So neither of them actually worked in the town, but that's where we lived.
Now, when you were coming up, I mean, your dad is with the Boy Scouts of America. What were you thinking in terms of, hey, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be the president? What was in your mind about what you were going to become?
Well, I had two uncles, two maternal uncles who were physicians, and I was sort of drawn to that. There were lawyers in my family as well, and I think between the two, I decided maybe medicine was the way to go, although I've always thought I would have really enjoyed being a courtroom trial lawyer as well. But just the sciences drew me in.
Okay.
The definitive part of that and how it's pretty exact, and you do it right.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I actually was kind of drawn the same way that you were, either to law or medicine, and ended up going down the law path. And part of that was I just wasn't smart enough to be what you are.
Right.
But part of
I
it
can
was
see that.
like, wow, we coming in burning today. But part of it was also what you said about being in the courtroom. There is something extremely exhilarating. You think about sports. Like, sports is competitive, right? And you get to a certain age, and unless you're a really good athlete, you're not going to keep doing it.
Right.
The law practice when I was doing it was a lot like a sport, if you're talking about the courtroom, and that it's me versus that guy, and I've got to argue better than that guy to win something. It gets the competitive juices flowing a little bit. So you decide to go down the medicine path. Did you always know you were going to be an OB, or was there? I mean, when you go to medical school, you really don't know what you're going to specialize in, do you?
Well, you really don't. People may say they do, but they don't. But I wanted to say one other thing about attorney. I was actually discussing my books or pitching my books to someone recently, and he said, "Are you a defense attorney?" He thought I just spoke like I was a defense attorney. I don't know what that means. But anyway, I think it's okay to be a lawyer. You got to have lawyers out there for sure. I have some great friends who are. But when I went to medical school, I really and I think things are different now. You see a lot of mentoring and a lot of rotations that kids do in high school and in college where they go to hospitals or doctor's offices. I really hadn't done any of that. I had just, been in my uncle's doctor's office just maybe to have a splinter taken out of my finger on vacation, went visiting them, that kind of thing, or gotten a cast on my arm when I broke my arm. So I really did not know that much about what it was like to be in a hospital when I started as an M1 here at UMMC. So basically, I finally just fell into something I thought I would be good at. And OBGYN, I think that was the right choice for me because it does give you an opportunity to actually operate, see patients in the office. You can be an internist one day, a psychiatrist one day, a surgeon the next day. And I think because I am a gynecologist, some people have said I do women's characters well in my books too.
That's an interesting thought too, right? I mean, there's certainly a degree of intimate knowledge and empathy that comes from a practice like yours, I would imagine. So at what point in your medical career, or maybe it was before you even started medicine, did you know, hey, I'd also like to write?
Well, I think that, and I get this question asked a lot, and I think that physicians have a lot of self-confidence, and I think you would want to go to a physician that has a lot of self-confidence. And I think that we think many times we can do anything. So I decided that I could write, and I had read some of the current contemporary authors of the mid-1990s that were becoming very popular, and used those books sort of as models to write. And as I've gotten into the craft, I do think that my writing, my craft has been honed, and the writing, improves and it becomes faster and that kind of thing. And there are, workshops you take and things you learn about how to do conflict correctly, and don't head hop, all these different things that you do to write correctly. But some of it just kind of comes out of you, and I just felt like I could. And when House Call, my first novel, was released, and we sold 5,000 copies in the first year, and many books, as we were talking earlier, sell less than 1,000 or less than 500.
Yeah, I think you were telling me like the average is like 200 or something.
200 or 300 books per copy, 200 or 300 copies per book for most on the average. But because it's sold and people wanted it, and it encouraged me to keep writing, and I've just kept going with it, and have enjoyed it for sure.
So I'm curious. You say I'm going to start writing. I feel like I can do this. I would imagine that there's an element of you making that decision that is also that, like, your profession at some level is very scientific. It is a matter of knowing parts, knowing diseases, knowing remedies, and it at times probably it doesn't feel super creative. So for you, was this an opportunity to sort of stoke creative juices outside of what you were seeing in your medical practice?
Well, I guess so. I've never really, I have a lot of other interests outside of the office. So my wife and I like to travel. We've, had raised 2 children, have grandchildren now. I like to work in the yard. I like to do as many athletic things as I think I can. So I don't know that I needed it to have some kind of balance to medicine. I just thought, I think I can do that, and I've found time to do it. So
tell me about the process. You decide you're going to write your first book. How do you start? What's day one?
Well, if you want to do it correctly, you're supposed to outline your book. And so you pretty much know how it ends before you start. Well, I don't really do that. I'm predominantly a pantser, which means you write by the seat of your pants versus an outliner. Although the novel I've just started, I have forced myself to outline it. And it will actually possibly be the second in another trilogy I'm going to start that started with Party Favors.
Okay.
So, and it is tentatively titled Party Crashers. Someone else suggested that title to me. Janet Taylor Perry, who's done some editing for me, suggested that title, and I like it. So I'm going that way, and I'm going to make myself outline it, and we're going to see how that works. Now, that will make it easier in writing, and it may not be as much fun, but even those who outline strictly say that, their characters take over the book. The characters begin to write the book, not you. And that's what's fun about it. Like I mentioned earlier, it's, putting yourself in a different situation and imagining yourself as somebody else.
Do you, even if you're not outlining, do you sort of profile the characters before you start the work of writing?
You have, and I have many times had a title before I had the book. And you have a central character or two, and you pretty much know who they are, what they are, what they need to do, what their character arc is.
Darden, I've got to ask, because you literally said you garden. When you come down to some of these characters, and plus you're in the business of like the preservation of life, there's a lot of like suspense and kind of not really horror, but that kind of inspiration of kind of Stephen King-ish. Where do you go in your brain to pull this out from?
She's really saying you're kind of messed up.
Crazy.
I mean, the title of one of the books is Fresh Frozen.
Right,
I mean,
sure. Well, I think sometimes just ideas come to you, and I may be at a writing conference and get an idea. The 5 Manners of Death came from a writing conference of 5 Ways to Die. it's just that's a hard question to ask how these answers come out. But I do think if people see you as a mystery writer and a suspense writer and then meet you and see you as sort of a normal person, then I think that's probably better than if they see you as what they really thought that you were as you wrote these
I don't
things.
know, Darden. It's a little jarring. It's a little jarring. No.
Well, it's like when you see Stephen King do an interview, you're like, that dude could do some of this stuff.
Well, I really don't want to be seen that way.
No, I know that. I know that.
Yeah.
I'm saying there are some authors where their personality actually does make you wonder, okay, what I'm seeing in your book may be a sign of your own mental depravity.
Yeah, and then
I don't get that sense.
My father was a
Thank you.
mortician, so this is very much kind of like mortician novels,
Sure.
kind of work. So yeah. That's the question I had, though, Darden.
Well, you want to have a certain level of suspense and thrills to a book, that keep people turning the page and maybe guessing what's going to happen next, or maybe they think what's going to happen next. But you really don't want them to be troubled when they finish reading the book. You want them to be satisfied and maybe hopefully caring about your characters and wanting to see those characters again. I had a lady at actually I went to a book club at a nursing home, and fortunately we had a big crowd that day, and she said, the one thing I like about Darden's books is they don't worry you after you're finished reading them. So if you're up all night, I hope it's because you're reading the book and turning the pages, not because you're worrying about what you just read.
Yeah, so you're not trying to be avant-garde and like leave you without a resolution at the end of the book.
No,
there is a resolution.
You have to resolve the book, and you don't have to necessarily end the story for those characters, but you have to certainly resolve the plot for people.
We're talking with Dr. Darden North, author of 7 books, more to come, his latest Rooftop. You can go out and get it. You can meet him on Saturday at Barnes & Noble. Which time? In Flowood.
From 12 to 3, and don't forget about Lemuria here in Jackson. It's a great bookstore.
Absolutely. So we'll take a brief break, come back, talk a little bit more about Darden, about what comes next. You're listening to The Sit Down with Russ Latino.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bobby Rush. As a blues man, I love Mississippi Public Broadcasting. If you support Mississippi music and their local programming, donate now, right now, and become a member today, not tomorrow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Doesn't matter how big or small, but we prefer big. Thank you very much.
The Measuring Show.
Since 1970, MPB has been enriching the lives of Mississippians.
Everything we do gives us the chance to grow and learn.
With your support, we are always there whenever and wherever you need us. Together through the years, together in the future. Please consider making a donation at mpbfoundation.org. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Hello, I'm Desiree Frazier, host of the award-winning news program, Mississippi Edition. We bring you conversations about the latest news from across the Magnolia State. Whether it's politics, healthcare, or education, you'll hear in-depth discussions on issues that matter to you. So join us each weekday morning at 8:30 on MPB Think Radio, or download the podcast, listen through the app, and online.
Right here on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Russ Latino. My guest today, author, physician, Dr. Darden North. You know, we were talking a little bit before the break about process and your process, which you kind of acknowledged was maybe a little different than a lot of people in that you don't typically outline the entire book. When you decided to write your first book, did you go, hey, I've got to find a literary agent before I write this whole thing, because who knows whether or not I'm going to be able to sell it? Or did you write it and then go find the agent?
I think well, I wrote the book first, and then look for agents. The agent wants you to have written a book before you, particularly if it's fiction. If it's nonfiction, you usually have a proposal before they'll accept you. But the first 3 books were self-published, and I had them done professionally. I mentioned the Gibbs Company did that for me. And then the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th have been commercially published by WordCrafts Press, which has been wonderful to work for. So it's nice not to be self-published and then I have to do all this work for myself anymore.
So you send out a copy of the book, presumably to multiple agents.
Sure. Well, if you're actually have a manuscript, you're pitching that to agents. And back in the day when I started this process back in I think 2005, prior to that, you were sending out letters with stamped addressed envelopes in them. And now, of course, everything's by email. So it's not unusual for an author to query, tens, if not hundreds of agents before, finally striking a deal. And there are some publishers, like my current publisher, that did not require an agent. I was able to go straight to the publisher, which, things have changed so much in the writing industry since I started, just with, the internet and email and things like that. So it's a lot different.
Yeah, I think this whole and the reason that I'm asking these questions is I bet there are people listening who have thought, hey, I'd like to write a book someday.
Sure.
And I think it is, even if they've got a great idea, they don't know where to start. The process feels overwhelming to them, right? And it sounds like you had to learn.
I did, and it's often been said that everybody probably has a book in them. I think the secret is to be able to write another one, and I've got 7 books now. So, I'm in it for the long haul. And I think that's when an agent or publisher meets you, that's what they want. They want to know that this person is, they may have another career. I think all writers have to have some other career to go to the grocery store.
Sure.
But I think they want to find somebody who's going to ride and stay in it for the long haul, no matter what your age. And it's never too late to write that first book. But I think you should, in your mind, have a second and a third behind it.
So you write the book, you get an agent, you get a bite after you send out tens or even hundreds of manuscripts to agents. You get a bite from an agent. They sell it to a publisher. Your book gets published. Then what? How do you get people to read the book?
You make that sound easy, but getting people to read your book is certainly the end point. And of course, now with all the social media that's there, I think all authors, even your really long time, really super famous authors, now have to do social media. It's basically free advertising, and I think writers need to portray themselves, like we said earlier, hopefully as normal people that are engaging. And I've had a lot of fun learning about social media through Facebook and Instagram, and I'm on all of those accounts under Darden North. You can get me on all those accounts, even TikTok. I finally gave into TikTok. My nurse at the office, Tony, is really good with social media, and she's been a good mentor as well. And I've had a lot of fun with that. And I do think that's helped me get my writing out there. I've got noticed someone from Australia downloaded one of my audiobooks the other day. So that's social media is a large part of marketing yourself as an author.
Now, do you find, Australia is clearly an interesting example because it's somebody way far outside of the United States, right? Do you find that you're picking up readership outside of Mississippi?
Yes. I know I've had people in Great Britain. I know I've got some readers over there. My books, to my knowledge, have not been translated out of English. I haven't given permission for anybody to do that. But hopefully one day we'll be in foreign countries. But I do know I do have some across the pond reading me and listening to my books as well, because we have 5 of my 7 novels are an audiobook.
So, I'm always interested, like, obviously I asked you about how you got started and sort of the point when you said, hey, I'm going to write a book. I think every writer, it's a little bit like musicians. Like every musician has a series of people or bands that influence their sound. And they say, hey, I like a little bit of this, I like a little bit of this. And before you know it, it comes together to be something unique, but also something made of the inspiration. I think that's true of writers too. So
Sure.
I'm curious, Mississippi's got this great literary history, phenomenal literary history. You're talking about Walker and Faulkner and Welty and all of these people, and obviously in the more modern times, people like Grisham who've had widespread commercial success. Your type of book it's a thriller, right? I mean, it's an edge-of-the-seat thriller. Who were the authors that kind of inspired you or got your wheels turning?
I had someone tell me early on I was like William Faulkner, except I use commas, which I thought was interesting. But I don't compare myself to William Faulkner. It's hard not to mention John Grisham or Greg Iles if you're writing. And again, those are the ones I started reading when I thought, I want to do this. At that time, I didn't really know of any physicians who were really writing fiction. So I did use them as models. And then I met a guy named Robert Dugoni who's in Seattle, and I actually went to some of his writing courses. But I think I've developed my own style, and I've had people tell me that. But and it is good to see people that have been wildly successful in writing, and you do want to be wildly successful.
Sure.
You can either do this as a hobby or not. But the more people that read my books, the better. So, but it is interesting though to see the people that are New York Times bestsellers are marketing themselves more than they used to be.
Yeah, you see that, and I don't want to get too far afield because obviously we want to talk about your book and literature, but you see that across the market right now, outside of books, and the way that products are marketed today. The idea of a Macy's store, as an example, as sort of the center of commerce, is no longer a thing. People are buying way more stuff that's individually marketed from companies they've never heard of just because of good social media advertising.
That's right. And of course, getting book reviews is very, very important. I know my wife many times, when she's going to order something online, she checks reviews, or if she does a lot of our travel arrangements. When she's going to pick a particular hotel, she'll check the reviews. So authors really do need reviews, and hopefully they're good reviews. But many times agents or publishers, if they're looking at your work or planning to take you on or considering taking you on as a client, will look and see how many reviews you've had, because that implies that at least that number of people have read your book. So a good place to post a review is certainly on Amazon or Goodreads. You can join Goodreads. It's free. Or just mentioning it on social media that you read a book and you liked it.
Yeah, and I think the Amazon thing is pretty important because, like your wife, when I am thinking about buying a product, very often it's from Amazon, whether it's a book or anything else. And you're right that the first thing you look at is how many stars does this thing have?
Exactly.
And then you want, and if you're comparison shopping, okay, both of these products have 4.7 stars. That's pretty good. Let me go and read the reviews and see how detailed they are, how genuine they are. And so that matters. And I would say if you're a fan of Darden's work, whether it's Rooftop or any of the other books, certainly buy them from a local bookstore. But then if you don't mind, go to Amazon and say, hey, I like this guy.
I could not have said that better, Russ. That was a good job.
So, I think we talked a little bit about kind of your process getting to this point, what you've already put out. One of the interesting things to me, and I do think this makes you prolific in a way, is that you're talking about not this book that literally was just released in the last couple of months, but you're talking about books that you are presently writing, and it sounds like you're thinking about multiple trilogies. What's in the back of your mind right now? What's coming?
Well, like I mentioned before, I'm thinking about a second in the trilogy installment of my orthopedic surgeon character from Party Favors, who is an Alaskan transplant that got hired by the hospital, and then the hospital suddenly drops him, and he is sort of forced into selling his patients unused narcotics to a drug dealer to make money. And that's what Party Favors was about. So I'm going to take him to another level in Party Crashers, if that's where I go. I do know, I was looking at my laptop the other day, and I do have 2 or 3 other novels that I started just with an idea, and I haven't deleted that file because I think I may go back to those. You mentioned you'd started some books before. So certainly if you're a writer out there, never throw anything away. You don't have to print anything anymore. You just keep it on a flash drive or keep it in your computer. Do not throw anything away. You can always use it.
Yeah, I think my problem when I started to write, one, I didn't do the outlining that you suggested that a lot of writers do. And two, I had this sort of intense desire in the back of my head to be very complex, right? And I think sometimes when you're trying to be very complex, it goes awry and it starts to feel cheesy, right?
Right. I learned that early on. In fact, the first book, House Call, I had a little bit too much medical history in there, and some of my early beta readers, and beta readers are people that just read your book for you ahead of time, said nobody cares what meconium is. Nobody cares about some of those things. Just leave that out. And you certainly want to give your readers some credit. They can figure some things out. You don't have to explain everything. In fact, if you watch a lot of TV shows, ones that you may be binging, the next episode has something going on and they really didn't explain why, and then you figure it out later. So you have to write your books the same way.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me, although anybody who's ever had a baby does know what meconium is.
Okay.
And you're like, how in the heck did this happen? It should not look like this. So no. I'm curious, you mentioned your bride earlier, and we've got to take a break after this question, but is she of the thought that, hey, when Darden retires from medicine, he's going to keep writing books? Does she give you good feedback?
Well, Sally, my wife Sally, doesn't read thrillers. She likes documentaries and historical fiction. So she's, and that's fine. A lot of times your family doesn't really read your books, but I can bounce things off of her. Sometimes it's a grammar issue or a sentence structure issue because she's a former high school English teacher and has done a lot of other things. She used to sell real estate. She's done a lot of things in her life. And unfortunately, a very smart person. And again, she gives you a lot of humbling advice many times. And sometimes I will read a sentence. She says she will say that's too complex. That's too much detail. So that's been a very, very good resource for me in being married to someone like that. And I think she knows I'll keep writing. And I think that's probably, it's good for your spouse, if you ever do retire one profession, to have something else to do.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine not doing something.
Oh, right.
The thought of that, even the thought of it kind of drives me crazy and makes me a little ADHD nervous. We're talking with Dr. Darden North right here on The Sit Down. We're going to be back in just a moment. Maybe talk a little bit about some other things that you're interested in. I know you're an Ole Miss guy. We'll get into Ole Miss a little bit. You're listening to Sit Down. We'll be right back.
Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, is the official companion podcast to the upcoming MPB original documentary, focusing on the life of Medgar Evers. The companion podcast, hosted by me, Rita Brent, will feature in-depth conversations, extended interviews, and exclusive archive footage not shown in the documentary. Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, video and audio episodes premiere September 18th. Find it on mpbonline.org or wherever you get your podcasts. MPB, your stories, our mission.
At the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience in Meridian, we believe in the power of the arts, storytelling, and education, just like Mississippi Public Broadcasting. MPB connects communities across the state with quality programs that inform, inspire, and engage. Their audience is loyal and appreciative of businesses that support public broadcasting, which makes underwriting on MPB a smart investment. Join us in supporting MPB. Learn more at mpbfoundation.org.
Hello, I'm Desiree Frazier, host of the award-winning news program, Mississippi Edition. We bring you conversations about the latest news from across the Magnolia State. Whether it's politics, healthcare, or education, you'll hear in-depth discussions on issues that matter to you. So join us each weekday morning at 8:30 on MPB Think Radio, or download the podcast, listen through the app, and online.
We're talking with author, physician, Dr. Darden North, IPPY award-winning author of Points of Origin and Party Favors. He's got a new book out, Rooftop, that you can pick up at your local bookstore, Amazon, anywhere you can buy a book. You know, I will say this. So much of media that we consume today is on this thing right here, your cell phone, and people pick it up and they scroll through 15-second videos or even read the news, you know, on their phone now. The paper is a dying thing. There is something about holding a book in your hands. And I know you probably sell an Audible and all this stuff too, but
sure,
there's something about holding a book in your hands that is different. Like it is an escape from everything else. And I think to this day, that's why people like reading things like you're writing, because it is an escape into a different world. It gives them a chance to turn off their brain, not to be connected to everything else. Do you see that? Do you get that kind of feedback?
Well, that's actually my goal, and I try not to get into politics and things like that in my books, and I'm not, you know, preaching. I may bring some current topic or some current world concern into the book. It may be part of the plot, but I want people to leave the book not thinking that was just all me, you know what I mean, as far as a person. But I do like to listen to audiobooks, but I do like to read a book too. And I was thinking, it was so hot in Jackson this past Sunday. I thought I had some things I need to do in the yard, but I thought if I could just go sit under that fan over there and just read a book this afternoon, that's probably, or in the air conditioning, that would have been a great thing to do.
There, you know, there are so many good storytellers that come out of Mississippi. And I've long had this sort of premise that is not entirely true, but it's essentially that all great art comes out of a place of pain. It's not entirely true, but if you think about music like the blues or jazz or whatever, right, there's an element of depth there that I think is connected to a certain degree of pain that people experience. And the South obviously has a tumultuous history, a fascinating history, and I think it has produced an ungodly number of musicians and authors and storytellers, by and large, because of the environment in which we're steeped.
Exactly. There's a lot to Southern Gothic literature. In fact, I spoke to that several years ago at the Natchez Literary and Cinema Celebration and explained how my books actually could belong to the Southern Gothic genre, which means you're talking about characters that basically grieve over something they never had, or people that are sort of out of touch with reality many times, or trying to constantly explain themselves or make excuses. So that's what that's about. And I think that's why we in Mississippi do write a lot. You know, there's certainly a lot of people to emulate and to pattern yourself, but there's just so much around the state and just the people you can meet and the color you can absorb from real people that will help you develop characters. I mean, you can write about the Gulf Coast, you can write about the Delta, you can write about a cosmopolitan place like Jackson,
and you didn't even do air quotes.
Exactly. I know. I think, yeah. I grew up in Cleveland, Mississippi, and I think it's the most cosmopolitan town in the Delta, so sticking with that.
You know, and there are still a ton of people who never put pen to paper but are phenomenal storytellers in Mississippi. I think I've got a friend, Lucian Smith, who practices law at Balch and Bingham, but his dad, Bill Smith, is probably the best storyteller I've ever been around. And it's sort of, if he's in a room, there's a circle of men around him listening to him tell stories, and he can weave them together in a way that you feel connected to the people he's talking about. You do sense their humor. You do sense their pain. There's just a ton of people like that still in Mississippi.
I have a friend named Robert Murphy who fits that bill right to a T. And many times when I'm around people like Robert or good storytellers, I would just love to turn my phone on and just let it record. In fact, I wish I had done that in my mother's waning years, just recorded a lot of the conversations I had with her, because and I think that's a gift to be able just to talk off the top of your head. I have to think a little bit when I write.
No, I get it. Well, look, I want to, you and I were talking off air, and you said, hey, I'm an Ole Miss guy.
Sure.
I think you maybe knew I was a little bit of an Ole Miss guy. Although, look, I root for State. I root for Southern. I root for Mississippi teams. I like to see them be successful. Jackson State's another great example of a school that's done some really cool things the last few years. But you're an Ole Miss guy. You attended Ole Miss. What's the place that it holds to you?
Well, I met my wife, Sally, at Ole Miss. I was editor of the yearbook, the Ole Miss, in 1978, and she was on the yearbook staff, so that's how we got to know each other. And then she was the editor of the 1979 Ole Miss. So that's a special time. If I had not stayed at Ole Miss and gone to med school, I might not have met my wife. But, our children have been educated at Ole Miss as well. And it's been so interesting to watch it grow. It's a much bigger college now than it used to, or university, than it used to be. And you actually have to go to school, I think, now on Fridays. You can't cut like people may have done in the past. But we love going to football games. And I don't let the Ole Miss Rebels having a good season or a bad season destroy my life or make my life. But it is good to follow them and to get to know as much about that as possible, and to see the university grow in the sciences, in engineering and things like that. And I've been on some liberal arts foundation boards and tried to remain as active as an alumnus as I could.
Darden, it's been great to have you in. I would just encourage people, again, if you're interested about who Darden is, go to dardennorth.com. You certainly can see all 7 of his books there, get a sense for what he's written. Rooftop is his latest. That is out. Pick up a copy. He'll be at Barnes & Noble in Flowood this Saturday, July 26th. I think you said 10:30?
Noon to 3.
Noon to 3, I'm sorry.
I'll meet you there at 10:30, though, if you're there.
Yeah, there you go. It's been a pleasure to visit with you. Thank you for coming on to the Sit Down.
I want to come back. Thank you.
The Sit Down is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting Think Radio, made possible thanks to the generous support of listeners like you. If you enjoy the guest and sit-downs we bring each week, please consider making a contribution to help keep this show and shows like this on the air. We come every Wednesday at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. You can catch us on Spotify, on Apple. You can catch us on YouTube for the live stream. The great beauty of having me and a guest on is the guest always looks prettier. We really appreciate you listening every week. We really appreciate your feedback. Today's show was co-produced by Germaine Flood, live stream, production by Abram Nanny. For my guest, Dr. and author Darden North, I'm Russ Latino. Stay tuned for Southern Remedy right here at 11 a.m. and join us next week for a new episode of Sit Down, heard only on MPB Think Radio.